So you transition into your first job, which you kind of mentioned. That unfortunately ended, as you kind of said. So then, how did you come up with the idea to actually the implementation to what you're doing now?
So it was a final year university project. Do you know that much about? Do you know that? See?
It now comes back to me that you said it, but for the sake of the people watching this who don't,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
no worries. So it was in our final year where our dissertation project, our major project, was a very open brief, and it was something that you started in the September of that year and carried all the way through to graduation, really, and it was the last thing you submitted. So I knew at that point I'm going to have to be passionate about whatever I choose. And the brief was to choose a subject area, design a problem. Choose a subject area, find a problem, design a solution. And that, I mean, for anyone who is a bit creative, that's a fantastic brief. And I was just like, okay, I can get my teeth stuck into that. And because of this almost affinity for education in my final year, that was prevalent on my mind. I thought, I'm aware of the value of education as I come to the end of my life in education. There's almost like a nostalgia and
okay.
and a gratefulness in your final year, because I was like handing in assignments for like the last time with my friends and stuff, and it was a sad time, but also kind of it humbled me a little bit. So that caused me to choose education in the developing world as my subject area, because I realized that not everyone had this standard of education, not everyone had these opportunities afforded to them. So I went in to conduct research in education in the developing world, and found the host of shocking statistics, such as 15% of the world's adults can't read or write, which is over 1 billion people in like kind of the 21st century who've never done the most basic things. Like every morning I fill in my daily planner, I read on a night, these fundamental things that allow me to grow. These people can't do that. And never mind just learn the basics of education. So I was almost getting closer to a problem. I was, in the aim of being more specific, I asked what is preventing these people from receiving a quality education. And in the developing world, the barriers are well documented. You could type in Google barriers to education in the developing world, and Global Citizen will have an article, for example. And I think they've got about 14 barriers there, well documented. And for me, it became about prioritizing these barriers. Okay, so which one's the most important? Which one's the most fundamental aspect that's preventing individuals from receiving a quality education? And after conducting primary research, over 2/3 of people in the field, NGOs, teachers, said that a lack of resources was actually simply the most fundamental barrier.
Mm.
So then I'd almost stumbled across my problem, which I felt quite passionate about, actually. So I decided to look at what other people had done to try and solve this problem. And Books to Africa donate physical textbooks, so you can donate revision books or use textbooks, and they go into schools and ship them to Africa. And it was at that moment I came up with, okay, well, that's not really efficient, because if it takes 6 months, it's very, very costly. And when the books get there, not the climates that can become damaged or worn, or even in the rainy season, there's been incidences where when I've interviewed guys from there, they get moldy because they're damp.
And it's also not scalable.
And
It's
not scalable, no, not at all. But the impressive thing about Books to Africa is they've donated over 1 million textbooks to Africa on pure funding shipments alone. So I knew the demand was there, but I knew that I'd had a more efficient method to do that, and that was the donated doc movement. So I thought, if I could replicate Moodle, basically that was my first thought, if I can replicate Moodle and do a Moodle for the developing world, whereby the wealth of educational content in the UK, for example, can be uploaded, i.e. donated, to our platform, and we'll verify it and make it available, and then we can allow teachers and students in developing countries to access it. So then, basically, to answer your question, I know I digressed a little bit there, but I saw that as really this concrete idea that I really believed in. I entered the If We Can, You Can challenge, the Ideas Prize, when I was still at work in the August, and won the challenge, which was awesome for me, because it was just like another version of like The Apprentice, or the thing that I loved. And then in the January, we were all made redundant. And then everyone was saying to us, this is a great opportunity for you to start up your idea, because they knew how passionate I was. And really, that it unfolded so naturally. I ended up setting it up in the February as a social enterprise.
No, I think it's very cool, because the one thing that I like, and it's also something that I like about video, is that you can't fake genuine emotion and passion and people talking about stuff. That actually, that's one of the reasons why I like to interview nice people that I quite like, just because it's a way to communicate your story in a way that in just written text doesn't come across. And actually, your social media is very good, but it's almost how, it's trying to communicate that with a whole kind of different audience. And it hit me in your 6-minute 40 presentation. I think, I can't remember if it was before or after mine, but it was really, really good. And then the other thing that I really liked as well, which comes back to your design background, is actually the unit that you kind of created. For one, it looks slick, but actually being very well thought out. So would you like to tell people about what that is, and then also the process to get to where you are?
Cool. Yeah. So, you know what? When I tell the story of how the idea came about, I usually stop at the initiative and stop at the donated movement. But in my project, it actually didn't stop there. It was like, okay, so great, we have this donated movement whereby teachers with documents can give to those without. It's quite simple. But the problem of accessing that material became very obvious. So it was like, okay, so if this material exists in the cloud, in the internet, where mycloudcoach came from, how did they then access it? They need some hardware. So then I did further research, found that tablets were very hot, on trend. Every student in Africa, there's a mission to get one laptop per child, or there's a mission to get tablets to children. E-readers, Kindles are very popular because they're very low cost. But I didn't believe in that. To be honest, I didn't believe in it, because I felt like I believe in collaborative learning, and I feel like throughout my time in education, there's always been a projector present, whether that was on acetate. Is it
acetate?
Yeah.
Very old school.
Acetate. I remember them old school projectors, and then obviously that transitioned into your run-of-the-mill projectors, DLP projectors or whatever they are, and so I believed in this was a fundamental bit of hardware for the classroom environment, and I thought, hang on a second, so we can design one piece of kit, low cost, that'll project some donated documents to a classroom full of learners, often oversized class. And this just became a much better solution in my head. And then through further research, that a projector was the way to go, because a tablet is very cost intensive, in the fact that if there's in Tanzania, we often speak with the guy, Oswin, who manages schools there. And there's one school in particular that has 80 students in that class, and there's only one teacher. And the teacher is obviously that outnumbered.
Yeah.
She's asked her daughter to come and help her, who's just finished A-level. So you imagine the situation. But
you can still only help and teach people
every
one at a time. Yeah.
Student. Exactly. So it's time intensive, cost intensive. And it's just not feasible for 80 kids in that class to have it. It doesn't even happen in the UK. So then my design project became about designing a low cost, very durable, very reliable projector that would provide access to the donated material. And that's when Pod ultimately was born.